Hey, what's up, y'all? Sorry, I'm not in the attic, but we still have the Word of God and the Spirit of God and Jesus in us, so we're going to be okay. We're going to do Judges chapter 8 from my backyard. And it occurs to me we're coming up on an election cycle where a lot of people are going to be asking the question, who is the right guy to lead us? Which is the candidate that checks all the boxes? And that's the way the story flows in Judges chapter 8 seems to be the question on the hearts of Israel, and by the way, of all of mankind always. We're always looking for that leader. Is this the one that we've always been waiting for, that checks all the boxes? Because Judges repeats this cycle of these deliverers that have some promise, and then they let us down, and their peace is not everlasting. And so now they're looking at Gideon thinking, this might be the guy. He checks some of the boxes. He checks the box of faith, ultimately, not at first. He's reluctant. He's saying, God, you got the wrong guy. I'm not the one. And he tests God over and over again. Make this offering be burned up. Make this fleece wet. Make this fleece dry. And he does eventually tear down the altar. And then he does go and fight in battle, 300 good guys against 135,000 bad guys, and wins the battle. So he checks the box, ultimately, of faith, and he checks the box of victorious warrior. And the story seems to be them looking at and going, could this be the guy? Do we want him to rule over us? And then what they're ultimately going to do is settle. And I want you to ask yourself the question, are you settling? First of all, of what leader you are going to be submitted to. And I'm not speaking politically, I mean of the Lord that you have surrendered to. Is he the Lord of the Bible who demands everything for his glory, or is it a Lord of your own making that you've settled for a smaller version that is easier to submit to and appease? And what about his rule in your own heart and life and him living through you? Have you settled for a smaller version of partially him living through you, or truly Jesus in control of you, living his life through you? So keep that in mind. Have you settled, or are you looking for the true one, the true ruler? They seem to be asking that question in the back of their mind of Gideon. So look at chapter 8. Remember, he just got Ephraim in on the tail end of the battle, and they went and killed Oreb and Zeb and brought their heads to Gideon and got the bad guys and said, here, brought those heads to him, kind of like a dog will bring a kill to the doorstep, say, look what I did for you. So they bring him the heads. But then they seem to be a little sore. Chapter 8, verse 1, then the men of Ephraim said to Gideon, what is this that you have done to us, not to call us when you went out to fight against Midian? That means not at the beginning of the battle. And they accused him fiercely, and he said to them, this is Gideon talking, he says, what have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. So see the contrast between the gleaning of Ephraim, which means the leftovers of Ephraim that Ephraim gets, aren't they better than the full harvest of Abiezer, that's Gideon's tribe? So what he's saying is, why are you worried about me and what I've done? You guys are way more awesome than me. It's kind of him saying, being one of you on your worst day is way better than being one of me on my best day. And what he's pointing to is, you guys got to win the end of the battle. You got to have the heads of the kings. So what are you complaining about? And they seem to be appeased by this. So here's another box that is checked. He is skilled in diplomacy, or you could call that peace within the Israelites, that he is able to bring peace between parties. That's another check. Verse 4, and Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300, the victorious warriors, who were with him, exhausted, yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, okay, Succoth, that's in the King James rendering of what a leech does in Succoth. Sorry, that was bad. Okay, please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. So there's still two more kings. He's after them, and he stops at Succoth, and he says, hey, will you feed my people? We're exhausted. Okay, and look at their answer. Verse 6, the officials of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to you, to your army? That's them saying, look, those guys are in charge around here. And if we help you and then you get defeated, they're going to come and attack us and say, how dare you help my enemy? So he says, what assurance do we have? So Gideon's very insulted by this. So in verse 7, so Gideon said, well then, which is kind of like, oh really? That's how you're going to play it? Like, okay, fine. And he says, when, not if, he says, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, here's what I'm going to do when I come. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to come back by here. It says, I'm going to flail or tear your flesh with thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And from there, he went up to Penuel. So the first group of people that he's going to remember and come back is Succoth. And now he comes to this other group, Penuel, verse 8. And he spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. And he said to the men of Penuel, okay, when I come again in peace, after I've won the battle, I'm going to break down this tower of yours. So here's two people. He's going to say, he asked to help. They said, no, we're afraid of Zebah and Zalmunna, and our money's on them, not you. And he said, all right, I'll remember this when I come back through here. And if you're thinking of a ruler that's going to be if we're waiting for the perfect ruler, of which we know that Jesus fits that picture perfectly, we look at this, and this seems perhaps a little bit overboard on how he's going to get petty revenge with these people. That's just a question that pops up in my mind. And then verse 10, now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men. Why 15,000? Well, that's all that were left of the army of the people of the east. For there had fallen 120,000 men in that original battle with Gideon. So 120,000 plus 50,000, that's 135,000. That's where we got the original number of 135,000 bad guys versus 300 good guys. And that the Lord won that battle to get glory for himself. So there's 15,000 left. Verse 11, Gideon went up by the way of the tent dwellers east of Nobah and Jogbehah and attacked the army, for the army felt secure. That means they were unaware. They were caught off guard. They were caught by surprise because they thought they were safe. Verse 12, Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them, and he captured the two kings, which means he now has them in hand. Remember they said, do you have their hands in your hand right now? No, I'm not going to help you. Now he has them in hand. And it threw the whole army into a panic. Yeah, because their leaders are captured. So the bad guy armies are in a panic. 13. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle by the ascent of Heres, and he captured a young man of Succoth. That's the first person he's going to remember. So he found this guy and said, hey, you're from Succoth, come here. Questioned him, said, give me names of the officials. And he gave him the names of 77 men. Verse 15, he came to Succoth and he said, hey guys, look what I got. Look who I got. He's got Zebah and Zalmunna. And he says, behold, which means look, Zebah and Zalmunna, which means I have them in hand now. But it's too late for you. Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, are the hands of them already in your hand that we should give you bread and exhausted? Well, here they are. And that's what he said. Now here's what he did in verse 16. He took the elders of the city and he took thorns of the wilderness and briars with them. And it doesn't say that he flailed them like he said he was gonna, but it does say it without saying it. It says he taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And what about the other people that his second stop, Penuel? It says, verse 17, he broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. All right. Now he turns to the only remaining enemy, the two kings that are in his hand. Verse 18, he said to Zeb and Zalmunna, "Where are the men whom you killed at Tabor?" Which is kind of like saying, what were they like? Tell me about them. And they answered, "As you are, so they were. Every one of them resembled the son of a king." He said, they look just like you. They look like they were related to you. Verse 19, and he said to them, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother," which means I'm not just saying they're my brother. They actually, sons of my mother. "As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you." So, but they didn't. They did kill him, so now the implication is, so I gotta kill you. Verse 20, so he said to Jether, his firstborn son, he says to his son, who's just still a boy, "Rise and kill them." But, contrast, the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid because he was still a young man, or he was still a boy. Verse 21, then Zeb and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as a man is, so is his strength." That's like them looking at Gideon and saying, "Be a man and kill us yourself." Okay. And Gideon arose and killed Zeb and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on their necks and their camels. All right. I can't help but feel like this is a little bit different than perfect justice. It seems a little bit more like petty revenge, fueled by human passion and even weakness. So does he check the box of perfect justice, or is it petty revenge? And here's what's sad about these Israelites. They end up settling for Gideon, and they go, "Whoa, this guy is it." Because you look at verse 22, then the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us." They're desperate. They beg him, "Please rule over us." And they have settled for partial faith, partial victory, partial peace, partial justice. And I want to encourage you, don't settle for submitting to a God of your own making, of your own understanding, that brings you partial faith, victory, peace, and justice. And even in your own life, in the life of Him living through you, I hope you don't settle for partial faith, partial victory, partial peace, and partial justice. Jesus is, and Jesus gives us perfect faith, perfect victory, perfect peace, perfect justice. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And I'll close with this. What kind of ruler is Jesus? For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. That's awesome. That's Jesus. Please, for you and in you, don't settle for less than Jesus. I love y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.